The world now has more than 1 million confirmed cases of COVID-19.
The head of the UN just this morning describing it as the worst global crisis since World War II.
In a best-case scenario, this country could see as many as 240,000 people die.
I want every American to be prepared for the hard days that lie ahead. We're going to go through a very tough 2 weeks. This is going to be a very painful, very painful 2 weeks.
Fortunately, today is not good news.
Globally, almost 2.5 million cases of COVID-19 have now been reported to WHO, and more than 160,000 deaths.
As we can see, currently developed countries like the United States, Italy, and Spain are the epicenter of COVID-19. Initially in Italy, doctors were available for every 240 patients. Now the country is facing not only a shortage of doctors, but also healthcare workers and protective equipment, PPE. They are facing a crisis. This crisis also affects developing countries like Colombia, where the ratio is much less, 1 doctor to 750 patients. A question I would like to raise is, will coronavirus devastate the poor? In this video, I'll talk about how developing countries were affected by coronavirus, specifically Malaysia and India, and how middle-lower income countries like the Philippines and Colombia are surviving the pandemic. On the 23rd of April 2020, Malaysia confirmed 5,603 coronavirus cases, while India confirmed 4 times the amount, up to 21,797 cases nationwide. Meanwhile, the Philippines had 6,981 confirmed cases, and Colombia with 4,356 cases. Aiming to break the chain of transmission and flatten the curve, the government of each state has put their country under partial movement control order or national lockdown.
Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin has announced a nationwide lockdown.
Dan untuk itu kerajaan memutuskan untuk melaksanakan perintah kawalan pergerakan mulai 18 Mac 2020.
पूरे देश में आज रात 12 बजे से संपूर्ण देश में संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन होने जा रहा है.
What Narendra Modi was talking about in that clip that you played was like the entire nation is going into lockdown.
Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has declared a lockdown of the capital, Metro Manila, after raising the maximum alert level in response to the coronavirus.
The coronavirus pandemic brings the global economy to an astonishing halt. These developing and vulnerable countries might be suffering intensifying harm, especially to the low-income communities. The harm, first, losing jobs, and second, emergency hunger. Most of them wouldn't know if the virus would find them before starvation did. Unemployment. The effective imposition of a worldwide quarantine is threatening mass unemployment in the travel and services industry. Millions of Filipinos who work abroad in healthcare industries or hospitality, such as on cruise ships, are worried that they may be laid off due to this pandemic. With the new travel restrictions being announced, some of the MSC, Mediterranean Shipping Company SA, cruise ships will not operate for a while, and this unfortunately also means a reduced need for manpower. The United Filipino Seafarers estimated more than 325,000 Filipinos working aboard a ship in 2018. If reduction is being carried out, the president of the union expects 70% of the Filipino workers without jobs. In a country like India, the workforce is heavily dependent on manual labor. About 80% of India's 470 million workers are in the informal sector, lacking contracts and unprotected by labor laws. Many are just manual laborers in the fields, factories, and streets of India. For them, coronavirus lockdown is an order to starve. The United Nations labor body has warned about 400 million people working in the informal economy in India are at risk of falling deeper into poverty due to the coronavirus crisis, which is having catastrophic consequences and is expected to wipe out 195 million full-time jobs, or 6.7% of working hours globally in the second quarter of this year. The International Labour Organization describes the coronavirus pandemic as the worst global crisis since World War II. Hunger emergency. The coronavirus pandemic has brought hunger to millions of people around the world. National lockdowns and social distancing measures are drying up work and incomes and are likely to disrupt agricultural production and supply routes, leaving millions to worry how they will get enough to eat. The chief economist at the World Food Programme, a United Nations agency, Arif Hussain, said 135 million people had been facing acute food shortages, but now with the pandemic, 130 million more could go hungry in 2020. Altogether, an estimated 265 million people could be pushed to the brink of starvation by the end of this year. In India, thousands of workers are lining up twice a day for bread and fried vegetables to keep hunger at bay. Uncertainty over food is building in India. Daily wage workers with little or no social safety net face a future where hunger is a more immediate threat than the virus. Across Colombia, poor households are hanging red clothing and flags from their windows and balconies as a sign that they are hungry and out of food. Still in Colombia, residents of the coastal state of La Guajira have begun blocking roads to call attention to their need of food. In Manila, faced with a looming food crisis, as the financial assistance promised by the Philippine government has yet to reach them, people in various parts of Luzon are left to their own devices to stave off hunger. In this urban slum, where social distancing is nearly impossible, most of them are just worrying about hunger. Some residents have started eating corn fungus, while others have planted vegetables in once idle plots. The same fear is also invading the land of Malaysia. Undocumented workers, from refugees, asylum seekers, economic migrant workers, etc., are also fearful how to provide food for their family. In Penang, Malaysia, the considered stateless Rohingya citizens failed to receive aid from the embassy and were left starving before the NGOs came to the rescue. Living with up to 8 children per family, losing their job during the lockdown period left them eating only rice and vegetables twice a day. To be served eggs is a luxury. As for the homeless, to avoid hunger and poor sanitation, among over 600 people around Kuala Lumpur were gathered in community shelter provided by the government. The Malaysian government is also making sure that they would obey the 1 meter rule and will undergo health screenings. These situations barely cover 8% of all unemployment and emergency hunger situations in these 4 countries. So to answer the question, will coronavirus devastate the poor? Sadly, the answer is yes. What can we do to help? What can the government do to help? Governments across these 4 countries have announced the creation and distribution of COVID-19 economic relief packages. Malaysia has announced a $4.75 billion package to stimulate the poor. The Philippine government announced a $528 million fund to assist various sectors in mitigating the impact of COVID-19. India has also announced a $22 billion bailout for the country's poor to help counter the economic effects. The Colombian government received a disbursement on $250 million from the World Bank to support the COVID-19 response. However, the implementation of these relief measures are way more important. Governments should make sure the injection of funds can reach the people who are in need first. NGOs have also been actively giving out food and hygiene kits to slum dwellers and several low-income groups. In terms of what we can do to help these vulnerable groups, we can always stay in touch with vulnerable friends and family, or donate to food pantries in our cities. For those with extra financial savings, they can always find authorized NGOs to give a financial donation. Everybody can participate to make our community safe. There can be no half measures and no excuses. Every life matters equally, and saving them cannot wait.
Make no mistake, we have a long way to go.